So what does it do to the emissions problem? Okay, so how do I measure or evaluate that one particular solution? The first thing I want to do is what does it do environmentally? And the most important environmental impact today is CO2. There's others, but let me just focus on that one. By doing that, we're going to reduce our CO2 reduction annually, 27 MMT, a million metric tons of CO2. So what does that mean? It means that the total annual is about 7,000 million metric tons for the nation. We've done a 37% reduction. This is not going to happen next year, by the way. But let's say 2035 or 2040, we may be able to achieve this. If we were to do it worldwide, this is a picture from our climatologist friends. I know nothing about it, but I take their picture, and they tell me that will do it. That's a reduction that will keep us from above a 2 degree increase, and the climatologist says that makes them happy. That avoids a lot of problems that you would hit otherwise. It's kind of what they call a guardrail. So a 37% reduction worldwide, and this would be our part. We may have to do more than our part, I don't know. Okay. So what about costs? I'm going to move past this slide for time efficiency. Here's the cost of my solution, this one solution. On the first column, those numbers you see are capacity. The bottom line is 1,031. That's gigawatts of new capacity. Today, our total installed capacity in the United States is about 1,200 gigawatts. So we have to essentially rebuild what we have today to do my solution. Okay, and the biggest and the largest one of my solution is here. Onshore wind, 630. I'm not just saying that because I'm from Iowa. I make a little money at it. It's the right way to go from a number of points of view. Okay, and then the overnight. So what does it mean about cost? There's essentially two issues with respect to cost. The investment, or we call it overnight in the business, the overnight cost. We're talking, the bottom line number is down at the bottom of the second column, $3.7 trillion to do that. That's a lot of money. But what do we save from a reduction of fuel resources? That's $264 billion annual is what we save by doing this. So it's about a 15-year payback period for this particular solution. Okay, and so what are we doing here? We're getting reduction in emissions, and we're getting a fairly high-cost solution, but ultimately a savings in production cost. And the third thing we're doing is we're actually reducing the losses. I didn't emphasize it, but in my solution, the losses go from about 57% down to about 43 or 44%. So a significant reduction in losses. How do we do that? Essentially, the answer is simple. Eliminate combustion, right? On the electric side, I'll get rid of combustion by reducing our reliance on thermal power plants and replacing it with wind systems, essentially, in my solution. Not completely, but essentially that's it. And on the automotive or the transportation side, get rid of the internal combustion engine, not get rid of it, I'm sorry, reduce it, and increase the reliance on electric motors. Much more highly efficient. Combustion is a process that leaks energy through the heat. And if you can reduce that, you can save a lot of energy in terms of losses. Okay, so there's still 2 or 3 more questions. We said, what kind of technology should we invest in? Now we still need to answer the question, where? And it makes sense to invest in technologies where the resources are located. In the left-hand, solar's in the southwest, we know that. The right-hand, geothermal's in the west, not in the east. It actually is, but it depends on how deep you can go. Economic geothermal is in the west. Biomass, a few different places in the country, but that's not going to be a huge player, I think. Wind is in a number of places, but certainly in Texas and the Midwest, potentially offshore, although offshore is more expensive. We've got to keep fossils in the picture, and nuclear is going to play a role, for sure. And looks like today, southeastern United States is probably ahead of the business in that way. And so the additional questions, in addition to, you know, what kind, how much of each one of these technologies we need to say where, and then when, in the course of the next 35 years, 40 years, when do you make those investments? It makes a big difference. And then, ultimately, once you've built them, how do you interconnect them? That's a big, big issue. It's a tiny sliver of the overall money, but a huge issue in making the solution actually implemented and to work. There's some discussion today on transmission investment at the national level. Let me tell you something that's never happened before. Nobody's ever proposed a national transmission plan before. So AEP has put something out there in the past couple of years. The eastern people on the eastern side, particularly Midwest ISO and some of their friends, are proposing some very high cost but effective transmission technologies to bring that Midwestern wind to the east side. But the point here is that we are building national transmission plans. We're making those plans today. And so this is what I want to leave you with my 1 minute that I have left. Well, I'm not saying this is the best solution. I'm just saying this is an example for you. And you want to look at technology portfolio, when to invest, where, and how to interconnect. This is a big part of the overall answer that we need to have in our hands before we start making a lot of policy. The number of solutions, the solution space is absolutely huge because of the number of combinations that you have between all of those different parts of the answer. And you need to evaluate each solution, certainly by cost and environmental impact. One I didn't emphasize but is extremely important is what I call resiliency. The ability of your overall infrastructure to withstand huge impacts. I don't mean, one transmission line falls down. I mean Katrina. How does our overall energy system withstand something like Katrina, which takes out, 30%, 40%, 50% of our overall gas infrastructure overnight, essentially? How do we withstand that? You look at the prices over the next year of energy as a result of Katrina, it really went up on a sustained basis. There's no right solution, but you need to be able to separate the good ones from the bad ones. Don't implement a bad one. Infrastructure planning is more than just a professor sitting in his office or her office and doing some calculations. A very complicated process, huge number of organizations, but it needs to start with good software analytical analysis. It needs to start there and be informed by that. There are some tools. National labs have them. Argonne has an excellent one. Marshall Times, DOE has something that they use well, and it's a good one. Plexus, there's some EPRI, Vintex, these are all tools. But I just want to make the comment that they are insufficient today. They're not going to be able to do all that we need them to do in order to properly guide. So we need to build from these tools. There's some limitations with respect to all of them. National Science Foundation, one of the sponsors, is helping us with a project here to do some of that, but we need a lot more investment along these lines. This is one technology that is not yet mature for the kind of answers that we need today. We need some more investment. It's essentially the guiding direction. Finally, I would just say there's a lot of things to do in energy. Identify the difference makers. Electrification of transportation is one difference maker. The second one is the greening of our electric side, particularly with respect to wind and nuclear. Geothermal and IEEE and solar will play a role, but the first two are, in my judgment, are really going to be difference makers, wind and nuclear. So if you want to learn more, I'll stop there. And this is what you really can do. If you really want to get into this and meet the players in the work that's developing the way to guide the future, this sort of analytical tools that's going to inform the process. We're bringing together all of the key players at Iowa State in November 30th in the symposium, national symposium, and you'll get a very good education of these things and meet some people that will probably be useful to you. So I'll stop there.